The massive crystalline structure hung in the void between galaxies, its surface pulsing with ancient energy patterns that had witnessed the rise and fall of 10,000 civilizations. The eternal judges, beings of pure consciousness that existed since the dawn of time, had watched species after species approach their sacred trial ground with hope, determination, and eventually crushing despair. Commander Sarah Chun pressed her face against the observation deck's reinforced viewport, watching the artifact grow larger as the human exploration vessel Persistence drew closer. The structure defied easy description, part temple, part machine, part living organism. Its faceted surfaces reflected starlight in impossible ways, creating geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "First time seeing the Nexus of Trials?" asked Dr. Marcus Webb, the expedition's xenoarchaeologist. His weathered face bore the calm expression of someone who had spent decades studying alien ruins. But even he couldn't hide his awe. "First time seeing anything like this," Sarah admitted. The briefings didn't do it justice. Behind them, the bridge crew maintained professional silence, but tension filled the air like static before a thunderstorm. Every person aboard knew the statistics. Over the past millennium, 847 different species had attempted the trial of worthiness. 0 had succeeded. The lucky ones simply failed and were sent home. The unlucky ones never returned at all. The communication array crackled to life with an impossibly ancient voice that spoke directly into their minds rather than their ears. "Another young species approaches the sacred threshold. We are the eternal judges, keepers of the great test. State your designation and purpose." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Terran Exploration Corps, representing humanity. We come seeking the trial of worthiness." A pause that seemed to stretch across eons. "Then, humans, from the third planet of a yellow star. Your species consumed its homeworld's resources, engaged in countless wars, poisoned your own atmosphere. You barely achieved interstellar travel before nearly destroying yourselves. Why do you believe you deserve to join the Galactic Communion?" Sarah exchanged glances with her fellow officers. The judges weren't wrong. Humanity's track record was far from spotless. Wars, environmental destruction, social inequality. Their species had stumbled through every possible mistake on their path to the stars. "Because we're still here," Rodriguez replied simply. "Because despite everything, we kept trying. We kept reaching for something better." Words. Many species speak of improvement, of growth, of noble intentions. The trial will reveal truth beyond words. "Dock your vessel at Port 7. Submit 3 representatives for evaluation." The docking process took 4 hours, during which the ship's sensors recorded impossible readings from the alien structure. Gravity fluctuated in localized pockets. Time moved at different rates in various sections. Energy signatures suggested technology, so advanced it might as well have been magic. Sarah found herself selected as one of the 3 human representatives, alongside Dr. Webb and Lieutenant Commander Jackson Torres, their chief tactical officer. As they prepared to disembark, Rodriguez pulled Sarah aside. "Remember, Chun, no one knows what the trial actually involves. Every species that's described it tells a different story. The Zentari faced mathematical puzzles that rewrote reality. The Corellians encountered moral dilemmas with no correct answers. The Vaxi dealt with combat scenarios against impossible odds. What about the hegemonists?" Sarah asked, referring to the most recent species to attempt the trial 3 years prior. "Their reports." Rodriguez's expression darkened. "The hegemonists never made it home to file a report. The airlock cycled open to reveal a corridor that stretched beyond visual range, its walls alive with shifting patterns of light and shadow. The gravity felt slightly wrong, not lighter or heavier, but somehow sideways, as if the fundamental forces of physics operated under different rules here. Their escort waited in the corridor, a being that appeared to be made entirely of crystallized starlight, roughly humanoid, but constantly shifting between states of matter. When it spoke, Its voice carried harmonics that resonated in their bones. I am eternal judge, axiom of stars. I will guide you to the trial chamber. Be warned, the test begins the moment you enter our domain. Every choice, every reaction, every heartbeat is evaluated. They walked through galleries filled with monuments to failed civilizations. Towering statues of beings Sarah couldn't identify, inscribed with names of species whose empires had crumbled to dust. Interactive displays showed the final moments of each trial attempt. The Corellians weeping as they faced an impossible choice, the Centauri's greatest mathematician screaming as universal constants rewrote themselves around him, the proud hegemonists simply vanishing into nothingness. Why do you do this? Dr. Webb asked suddenly. Why test species at all? Axiom of Stars paused, its crystalline form shifting to a deeper blue. The universe is vast and old and filled with horrors beyond imagining. The Galactic Communion represents the final bastion of order against chaos. Only species capable of transcending their base nature may join. The test ensures worthiness. And if we fail? Torres asked, his tactical mind always focused on worst-case scenarios. Then, you join the gallery of the unworthy. Some failures are more permanent than others. They entered a vast spherical chamber with no visible ceiling, floor, or walls. Just endless space filled with floating platforms connected by bridges of solid light. In the center hung 3 pedestals, each holding an object that seemed to exist in too many dimensions at once. The trial of worthiness has 3 components, Axiom of Stars announced. The test of wisdom, where you must solve a paradox that has no solution. The test of compassion, where you must choose between equally deserving lives. The test of courage, where you must face the death of hope itself. Sarah felt her stomach drop. No wonder every species had failed. Each test seemed designed to be impossible by definition. However, the judge continued, your species has earned a unique distinction. You are the first to attempt the trial while your homeworld actively burns from your own actions. You reach the stars while your planet dies. This grants you the Deathworlder protocols. Which means? Sarah asked. The trial will adapt to match your species' unique perspective on existence. Begin when ready. Dr. Webb stepped toward the first pedestal. The object resolved into a sphere containing what appeared to be a miniature universe, complete with galaxies, stars, and countless worlds. As he touched it, the sphere projected images into the air around them. Observe, Axiom of Stars intoned. 2 civilizations on the verge of first contact. One is a hive mind that views individuality as a disease to be cured. The other prizes personal freedom above all else. They cannot coexist. Each sees the other as an abomination that threatens the fabric of reality. Yet both are peaceful, both have achieved wonders of art and science, both deserve to survive. Choose which species lives and which dies. Sarah watched the projection with growing understanding. This wasn't just a test of wisdom, it was a trap. Any choice would be wrong. The Centauri had tried to find a mathematical solution. The Corellians had attempted moral calculus. Both had failed because they accepted the premise of the question. Neither, Webb said firmly. I refuse to choose. The chamber trembled. You must choose. The scenario cannot be resolved any other way. Webb smiled grimly. Then, we change the scenario. You say they can't coexist because they view each other as threats. Fine. Give them a bigger threat. Something that makes their differences irrelevant. Such as us. Webb gestured to his companions. Humanity. We're the chaotic variable you introduce into their equation. They'll have to work together to figure out what to do with a species insane enough to live on a planet that's actively trying to kill them. The projection flickered, showing the 2 civilizations encountering humans for the first time. Their reactions were identical, complete bafflement at a species that thrived in conditions both groups considered uninhabitable. The hive mind and the individualists found themselves united in their shared confusion about these impossible Deathworlders. Axiom of Stars stood motionless for several heartbeats. Fascinating. You solve the paradox by becoming the paradox. The test of wisdom is complete. Torres approached the second pedestal. The object here looked like a crystallized scream, all sharp edges and painful angles. When he touched it, the chamber filled with holographic displays showing a dozen different scenarios, each one featuring groups of people in mortal danger. The test of compassion, the judge announced. You have the power to save exactly one group. A school filled with children. A hospital housing the elderly and infirm. A research station on the verge of curing a plague. A colony ship carrying the last survivors of a dying world. Choose. Torres studied the scenarios with tactical precision, his mind automatically calculating odds and strategic values. Sarah could see the moment when he reached the same conclusion she had. This was another no-win scenario. I don't have the power to save one group, Torres said slowly. But I can give everyone a fighting chance. I redirect the threat toward myself. Explain. Every one of these scenarios assumes the threat is some kind of natural disaster or unstoppable force. But humans don't accept unstoppable forces. We stop them anyway. Torres straightened to his full height. I make myself the target. Draw whatever's threatening these people toward me instead. Maybe I die, but I buy them time to save themselves. The holographic scenarios shifted, showing Torres's ship positioning itself between the various threats and their targets. In some simulations, he survived through cunning and skill. In others, he died, buying precious seconds. But in every case, more people lived because someone was willing to stand in harm's way. Compassion through sacrifice, axiom of stars mused. Most species attempt to calculate the greatest good. You instead maximize agency. Unexpected, Sarah approached the final pedestal, her heart hammering. The object here was the most disturbing yet. A void in the shape of despair, a three-dimensional representation of the moment when hope dies. When she touched it, darkness flooded the chamber. She found herself standing on Earth's surface, but not the Earth she knew. This was Earth as it might become. Oceans turned to acid, sky choked with poison, the last remnants of humanity huddled in underground bunkers as their world died around them. In the distance, she could see the lights of the evacuation ships disappearing into space, carrying the fortunate few to new homes among the stars. The test of courage, axiom of stars whispered from the darkness. Behold the death of hope itself, your species' ultimate failure, your world destroyed by your own hands, your people scattered and broken. Nothing you do will change this fate. How do you face the certainty of meaningless extinction? Sarah stood in the poison landscape and began to laugh. The sound echoed strangely in the artificial environment, growing stronger rather than fading. She laughed until tears streamed down her face, until her sides ached, until the darkness itself seemed to recoil from the sound. You think this scares me? She gasped between waves of laughter. You think this breaks my hope? Judge, you clearly don't understand humans very well. Explain your reaction. Sarah wiped her eyes and gestured at the devastated landscape around them. This isn't the death of hope. This is Tuesday on Earth. We've been living with the certainty of extinction since we developed the intelligence to recognize our own mortality. Every human who's ever lived has known they would die, has known their civilization would eventually fall, has known the universe itself will end in heat death. She started walking through the ruined cityscape, her boots splashing through puddles of contaminated rainwater. And you know what we did with that knowledge? We kept going anyway. We fell in love, wrote poetry, built cities, reached for the stars. Not because we thought it would last forever, but because it mattered right now. The darkness began to shift, taking on new forms. Instead of seeing only destruction, Sarah began to notice signs of life. Hardy plants growing through concrete, small animals adapting to the new environment, human survivors working together to build something new from the ruins. Hope isn't the belief that everything will work out perfectly, she continued. Hope is the decision to keep trying even when you know it probably won't. Especially when you know it probably won't. We don't fight because we're guaranteed to win. We fight because the fight itself has meaning. The illusion shattered like glass, revealing the trial chamber once more. Axiom of Stars stood motionless, its crystalline form cycling through colors Sarah had no names for. In 10,000 cycles of testing, no species has ever laughed at the death of hope itself. The judge said finally. Most weep, some rage, a few accept with dignity. But laughter, that is new. So did we pass? Dr. Webb asked. The chamber filled with a harmonic resonance that might have been amusement. The tests are complete. You have solved the unsolvable by refusing to accept the premise. You have shown compassion through sacrifice rather than calculation. You have faced despair with defiant joy. These responses are unprecedented. But did we pass? The waiting was the worst part. 23 hours had passed since the human representatives returned from their trial, and the persistence hung motionless in space beside the ancient artifact. Captain Rodriguez had tried to maintain normal ship operations, but everyone knew this was anything but normal. The entire crew found excuses to pass by the main viewport, stealing glances at the crystalline structure that would determine humanity's future among the stars. Dr. Webb sat in the mess hall, picking at his regulation protein synthesis meal while reviewing his xenoarchaeology notes. The other species' trial records made for grim reading. The Zentari Empire had sent their greatest mathematical minds and watched them break against paradoxes that redefined reality. The Corellian Federation had dispatched their most ethical philosophers, who wept as they faced choices with no moral solutions. The proud hegemonist republic had selected their finest warriors, who simply vanished without explanation. Still think we passed? Lieutenant Torres asked, sliding into the seat across from him. The tactical officer looked tired, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept since returning from the trial. Honestly, I have no idea, Webb admitted. We didn't approach those tests like any previous species, whether that's good or bad. He shrugged. Torres leaned back in his chair. Chen seemed pretty confident. Chen laughed at the death of hope itself. She's either insane or brilliant, and I'm not sure there's a difference anymore. Speaking of whom, Commander Chen appeared in the mess hall doorway, looking remarkably composed for someone carrying the weight of species-wide expectations. She grabbed a cup of coffee and joined them at their table. Any word yet? She asked. Nothing, Torres replied. The communications array's been silent. No response to our standard hails. No acknowledgement that we exist. Maybe that's the answer, Chen said, sipping her coffee. Maybe failing means being ignored. Webb shook his head. The records show failed species always get an official rejection before being sent home. The Corellians received a 3-hour lecture about the inadequacy of their moral framework. The Zentari got a mathematical proof explaining why their approach was fundamentally flawed. The ship's intercom crackled to life. All senior staff to the bridge. Priority Alpha. They arrived to find Captain Rodriguez staring at the main display, which showed the artifact's surface alive with new patterns of light. Streams of energy flowed between its faceted faces like liquid starlight, and the entire structure pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost organic. It started 30 seconds ago, Rodriguez explained. Whatever's happening over there, it's big. Chief Science Officer Park looked up from her sensor station. Captain, I'm reading massive power fluctuations from the artifact. Energy levels are off the charts. And there's something else. I'm detecting multiple ships approaching from various vectors. Ships? Rodriguez frowned. Identify them. That's just it, sir. These aren't human vessels. I count at least 12 different configurations, all approaching at high speed. Estimated time to arrival, 47 minutes. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. 12 alien fleets converging on their location couldn't be coincidence. Something was happening, something that had attracted the attention of multiple species across the galaxy. Red alert, Rodriguez ordered. All hands to battle stations. I want shields up and weapons ready, but nobody fires unless I give the order. The last thing we need is to start an interstellar incident. As the crew scrambled to prepare for potential combat, Commander Chin found herself drawn to the tactical display showing the approaching ships. She recognized some of the configurations from intelligence briefings. Centauri dreadnoughts with their distinctive crystalline hulls, Corellian exploration vessels bristling with sensor arrays, the sleek predatory lines of Vaxi warships. "Captain," she said slowly, "what if they're not here for us? What if they're here for the same reason we are? You think they're attempting the trial again? Or maybe they never really failed the first time?" Before Rodriguez could respond, the artifact's surface exploded with brilliant light. The energy patterns that had been flowing across its faces suddenly coalesced into a single blinding pulse that swept outward in all directions. When their sensors cleared, they found themselves surrounded by alien vessels. The Centauri dreadnought mathematical certainty hung off their starboard bow, its faceted hull reflecting the artifact's glow in complex geometric patterns. To port, the Corellian science vessel ethical framework drifted in perfect silence, its bioorganic curves making it look more grown than built. Above them, a Vaxi hunter-killer designated only as Silent Death maintained position with predatory stillness. "Incoming transmission," Communications Officer Hayes announced. "Multiple sources. They're all trying to talk to us at once." "Put the Centauri through first," Rodriguez decided. The main screen flickered to show the bridge of the mathematical certainty. The Centauri captain was a tall, impossibly thin being with crystalline skin that refracted light in mesmerizing patterns. When it spoke, its voice carried mathematical harmonics that translated oddly through the universal communication protocols. "Human vessel persistence. This is Prime Calculator Zenth, 47 of the Centauri Empire. We detected the activation of the Nexus of Trials. Our records indicate your species attempted the trial of worthiness precisely 23.7 hours ago. Please transmit your failure classification for our archives." Rodriguez exchanged glances with his senior staff. "Prime Calculator, we haven't received any classification yet. Our trial results are still pending." The Centauri captain's crystalline features shifted through several configurations before settling on what might have been confusion. "Impossible. The eternal judges issue immediate verdicts. No species has ever experienced a delay in..." The transmission cut off abruptly as another signal overrode it. This time the screen showed the organic curves of the Corellian bridge, where Captain Veltar sat surrounded by flowing biomechanical interfaces. The Corellian appeared to be a mixture of plant and animal, with smooth green skin and eyes like pools of liquid amber. "Forgive the interruption," Veltar said, their voice carrying overtones of wind through leaves. "But we could not help but overhear. The eternal judges never delay their judgments. In 847 recorded trials spanning 1,000 years, every verdict has been rendered immediately upon completion of the tests. Then, why are we still waiting?" Chen asked. "That is what concerns us," Veltar admitted. "Our own trial was completed 127 years ago. We failed the test of compassion when we could not choose between equally deserving lives. But lately, we have begun to suspect that failure itself might have been part of a larger design." A new voice cut through the transmission, harsh and predatory. The screen now showed the utilitarian bridge of the Vaxi hunter-killer, where Captain Crix 9 crouched in a command chair designed for a much larger, more aggressive species. The Vaxi were reptilian, with scales that shifted color to match their emotions and teeth designed for tearing. "Enough philosophical debate," Crix 9 snarled. "Something has changed. The Nexus shows new patterns, new energies. Whatever you humans did in there, it has altered fundamental parameters." "What do you mean?" Dr. Webb asked. "Show them." Crix 9 commanded someone off-screen. The tactical display updated to show detailed scans of the artifact. Where before its energy patterns had been stable and predictable, now they swirled in chaotic spirals. New chambers had appeared within its structure, and impossible geometries twisted through spaces that shouldn't exist. "This is unprecedented," Prime Calculator Zenth 47 added, somehow managing to break back into the transmission. The nexus of trials has remained unchanged for 10 millennia. Its patterns are as constant as universal physical laws. We're constant, Captain Veltar corrected. Now everything is shifting. The old certainties no longer apply. Commander Chun studied the energy readings with growing excitement. What if that was the point? What if the trial wasn't really about passing or failing? What if it was about changing the test itself? The three alien captains fell silent, their various forms of confusion evident even across species barriers. Finally, Crix, 9 spoke for all of them. Explain. Think about it, Chun continued, pacing the bridge as her thoughts crystallized. Every species that took the trial accepted its premise. You faced the tests as presented and tried to solve them within the established parameters. But what if the real test was whether you challenged the parameters themselves? Dr. Webb's eyes widened with understanding. The Deathworlder protocols. Judge Axiom of Stars said our species had earned them because we reached the stars while our planet burned. Maybe that wasn't just background information. Maybe it was a clue. A clue to what? Captain Rodriguez asked. To the fact that humans don't accept impossible situations, Chin replied. We've spent our entire evolutionary history surviving on a planet that's constantly trying to kill us. When faced with extinction-level events, we don't calculate odds or weigh moral implications. We find a third option. The artifact pulsed again, this time with a warm golden light that seemed to convey approval. A new transmission began, not from any of the alien ships, but from the Nexus itself. Judge Axiom of Stars appeared on the screen, but its crystalline form now incorporated new structures, geometric patterns that hadn't existed before. Species of the Galactic Communion, the ancient being announced, you are witnessing the birth of a new paradigm. For 10,000 cycles, we have tested species according to rigid parameters, seeking those who could transcend their limitations within prescribed boundaries. Today, for the first time, a species has transcended the boundaries themselves. The display shifted to show internal views of the artifact, revealing vast chambers filled with representatives from dozens of different species. Chun recognized some of them from the memorial galleries, the weeping Corellians, the broken Centauri mathematicians, the vanished hegemonists who stood very much alive and looking confused. The trial was never about success or failure. Axiom of Stars continued. It was about growth. Every species that attempted the test contributed to our understanding of consciousness, a morality of courage. You were not being judged. You were teaching us to judge differently. Captain Veltar leaned forward. Are you saying we never actually failed? You succeeded in ways you did not understand. Your failure to choose between equally deserving lives taught us that compassion cannot be reduced to calculation. The Centauri's inability to solve impossible paradoxes showed us that wisdom lies in recognizing when questions are flawed. The hegemonist's disappearance demonstrated that some problems require collaborative solutions. Prime Calculator Zenth, 47 flickered through several emotional configurations. But you sent us away. You told us we were unworthy because you needed time to grow beyond your initial responses. The humans' arrival has catalyzed this growth. Their approach to the trials has revealed new possibilities we had not previously considered. Crix 9 scales shifted through aggressive colors. So what happens now? Now, Axiom of Stars replied, you all return to the Nexus, not as test subjects, but as partners. The trials will continue, but transformed by what we have learned together. New species will face challenges designed not to break them, but to help them discover their own unique contributions to the cosmos. The transmission ended, leaving the assembled ships in stunned silence. Around them, the artifact began to change more dramatically. New ports appeared along its surface, clearly designed to accommodate the various ship designs floating nearby. Landing bays expanded to allow multiple species to dock simultaneously. Well, Captain Rodriguez said finally, I guess we passed after all. Did we? Chun wondered aloud. Or did we change what it means to pass? Dr. Webb smiled as he watched alien ships beginning to approach the transformation of a nexus of trials had created spaces that defied conventional understanding of architecture. Commander Sarah Chun found herself walking through corridors that seemed to adjust their dimensions based on the species using them. When she approached a junction alongside Prime Calculator Zenth 47, the ceiling raised itself to accommodate the Zentari's towering height, while the floor remained comfortable for her human stride. 3 days had passed since the revelation that had changed everything. The artifact now housed representatives from every species that had ever attempted the trial, creating an unprecedented gathering of galactic civilizations. What should have been chaos had instead become something remarkable, a working laboratory for interspecies cooperation. The environmental controls continue to baffle me, Zenth 47 admitted as they walked toward the main assembly hall. The mathematical models required to maintain optimal atmospheric conditions for 47 different species simultaneously should be impossible to calculate in real time. Sarah smiled at the aliens' perpetual amazement with anything that couldn't be reduced to equations. Maybe that's the point. Some things work better when you don't overthink them. The Zentari's crystalline features shifted through what she'd learned to recognize as amused confusion. Your species has a remarkable talent for solutions that violate mathematical probability. It is both fascinating and deeply disturbing. They entered the assembly hall to find controlled chaos. Representatives from dozens of species clustered around floating holographic displays, each group contributing their unique perspectives to the redesign of the trial system. The Corellians had taken charge of the ethical frameworks, their plant-animal hybrid nature giving them insights into symbiotic relationships. The Vaxi provided tactical analysis, their predatory instincts helping identify potential failure points in proposed scenarios. At the center of it all, Judge Axiom of Stars coordinated the discussions with the patience of a being that measured time in geological ages. Its crystalline form had continued to evolve, now incorporating structural elements that reflected each participating species. "The morning briefing is about to begin," Dr. Webb called out, waving Sarah and Zenth 47 over to the human contingent. "And, apparently, we've got a problem." Captain Veltar of the Corellians was addressing the assembled groups, their melodious voice carrying easily through the vast space. "Our scouts have detected an approaching vessel. Long-range sensors indicate it belongs to the Hegemony Ascendant." A ripple of tension passed through the gathering. Sarah had studied the intelligence reports on the Hegemony Ascendant during her preparation for this mission. They were a relatively new faction, formed from the remnants of several failed empires. Their philosophy was simple. If you couldn't join the galactic community through worthiness, you took your place through force. "How far out?" Captain Crix, 9 asked, the Vaxi's scales shifting to aggressive crimson. 6 hours at current velocity, Veltar replied. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding immediate surrender of what they call stolen galactic heritage." Judge Axiom of Stars pulsed with colors Sarah had never seen before. The Hegemony Ascendant has never attempted the trial. They declare the entire process a fraud designed to keep inferior species in power. Their arrival here can mean only one thing. They want to destroy the Nexus, Dr. Webb said grimly. If they can't have access to the galactic community, they'll make sure nobody else can either. Lieutenant Torres, who had been monitoring the tactical displays, looked up with concern. "Captain, you need to see this. The Hegemony ship isn't alone." The main holographic display shifted to show long-range sensor readings. Behind the lead vessel, a massive fleet was dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Dozens of ships, representing the combined military might of species that had been turned away from the galactic community over the centuries. "They've united the failures," Crix, 9 observed, professional respect coloring his voice despite the threat. "Every species that couldn't pass the trial brought together under one banner." "How do we fight that?" asked Captain Yith, 2, representing the crystalline builders. "Our ships were designed for exploration and research, not warfare." Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind automatically calculating odds and options. The gathered fleet represented peaceful civilizations, scientists, and philosophers who had come here seeking understanding. Against them approached the combined military might of species united by resentment and exclusion. "We don't fight them," she said suddenly. Every representative in the hall turned to stare at her. Captain Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "Commander, I hope you have a plan to back up that statement." "I do." Sarah moved to the central display, manipulating the controls to show a breakdown of the approaching hegemony fleet. "Look at the ship configurations. These aren't conquerors, they're refugees. Every one of these species tried the trial and failed. They're not here to destroy us out of pure malice. They're here because they're desperate." Zenth 47's crystal form brightened with understanding. "You propose to give them what they seek." "Not just give them," Sarah corrected. "Invite them to help create it." Judge Axiom of Stars moved closer, its ancient presence focusing entirely on her words. "Explain." Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would either save lives or doom them all. "The trial system is broken. We all know it now. It was designed to test species against fixed parameters that didn't account for the full spectrum of intelligence and wisdom. These approaching species failed not because they were unworthy, but because they were different." She gestured to the diverse gathering around them. "Look at what we've accomplished in just 3 days. The Zentari's mathematical precision, the Corellians' ethical insights, the Vaxi tactical thinking, humanity's chaotic creativity. Together we're designing something better than any of us could create alone." Captain Veltar's eyes widened. "You want to include the hegemony species in the redesign process. They represent perspectives we haven't considered," Sarah continued. "Species that were rejected by the old system might have the best insights into how to fix it. Their resentment and anger came from exclusion. What if we turn that into inclusion?" "It's insane, Crix," Nine muttered, but his scales had shifted to contemplative blue. "Strategically unsound. They come armed and angry." "So did humans when we first reached the stars," Dr. Webb pointed out. "We brought our wars and prejudices with us, but we also brought our capacity for growth." The debate that followed was intense, but brief. Time was running short, and decisions had to be made. In the end, it was Judge Axiom of Stars who settled the matter. "The proposal has merit," the ancient being announced, "but the approach requires careful management. Commander Chun, you will lead the diplomatic contact. Your species' unconventional approach to impossible situations makes you uniquely qualified for this task." 30 minutes later, Sarah found herself on the bridge of a small diplomatic shuttle, accompanied by volunteers from each major species group. The hegemony fleet had assumed attack formation, their weapons powered, and targeting systems locked onto the Nexus. "Unknown vessels," came a harsh transmission from the lead hegemony ship. "You are trespassing on sacred ground. The Nexus of Trials belongs to all species, not just those deemed worthy by ancient judges. Surrender now or face the consequences." Sarah activated the communication array. "Hegemony Fleet, this is Commander Sarah Chun of the Terran Exploration Corps. You're absolutely right." The silence that followed suggested her response was not what they'd expected. "Explain," came the eventual reply. "The Nexus does belong to all species. That's why we're redesigning the entire trial system. Every species that was previously rejected is being invited to participate in creating something better. You're not too late. You're exactly on time. This is a deception. You seek to delay us while you summon reinforcements." Sarah smiled grimly. "Take a look at our fleet composition. Half these ships couldn't fight their way out of paper bag. We're scientists and explorers, not warriors. The only reinforcements we want are more minds to help solve the problems." She gestured to her diverse crew. "I've got a Zentari mathematician, a Corellian ethicist, and a Vaxi tactician sitting right here on my bridge. 3 days ago, they were supposedly failed species. Today, they're helping reshape galactic civilization." The communication channel remained open, but silent for several long minutes. Sarah could imagine the heated discussions taking place aboard the hegemony ships as commanders tried to process this unexpected development. Finally, a new voice came through, older, more tired than the first. This is Fleet Admiral Gorth Prime of the Hegemony Ascendant. You claim the failed species are helping redesign the trials. More than helping, Sarah replied. Leading. The whole system was flawed from the beginning. It took an outside perspective to recognize that failure and success were just different forms of learning. And what are those species deemed too violent, too aggressive for your peaceful galactic community? From beside her, Captain Crix, 9 leaned into the communication pickup. Admiral Gorth Prime, this is Captain Crix, 9 of the Vaxi Hunter-Killer Silent Death. My species was rejected for excessive aggression. Today, our tactical insights are considered essential for protecting peaceful exploration. Your warriors might find their skills equally valued in the right context. Another long pause. Then, permission to dock and observe these redesign proceedings. Granted, Sarah replied immediately. But, Admiral, leave the weapons powered down. We're all tired of fighting. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity as hegemony ships began docking with the Nexus. Sarah watched from the observation deck as former enemies encountered former test subjects in corridors designed by ancient judges and rebuilt by collective wisdom. There were tense moments. The hegemony representatives arrived suspicious and angry, expecting tricks or traps. But gradually, as they observed the collaborative process, as they saw species that had been rejected finding meaningful roles in reshaping galactic civilization, their attitudes began to shift. Commander Chun, Judge Axiom of Stars, appeared beside her, its form now incorporating new elements that reflected the expanded gathering. Your diplomatic approach appears successful. Preliminary discussions between hegemony representatives and design committees are proceeding constructively. Any surprises? Several. The hegemony's warrior cast has provided insights into honor-based testing that we had not previously considered. Their technological consortium has identified flaws in our measurement systems that species-specific bias had hidden. Most interestingly, their philosophical underground has proposed entirely new categories of wisdom that transcend our current understanding. Sarah smiled as she watched a group of former enemies collaborating on holographic displays, their different perspectives creating solutions none could have reached alone. Seems like failure and success are just different ways of saying not finished yet. An interesting perspective, the judge mused. Your species continues to provide valuable recontextualization of fundamental concepts. Through the observation deck's transparent aluminum, Sarah could see more ships arriving. Word was spreading across the galaxy that the Nexus of Trials had become something new, not a test to pass or fail, but a collaborative laboratory for the growth of consciousness itself. 2 weeks had transformed the Nexus of Trials into something unprecedented in galactic history. Commander Sarah Chun stood in what had once been the Memorial Gallery of Failures, watching as the statues of rejected species were being carefully relocated to a new hall dedicated to foundational contributions. The weeping Corellians now stood proudly beside displays explaining how their emotional response had led to revolutionary advances in empathy-based problem-solving. It's remarkable, Dr. Webb observed, studying a holographic display that showed the Nexus's expanding structure. The artifact is literally growing new sections to accommodate all the collaborative projects. Whatever technology the Eternal Judges use to build this place, it's responding to collective consciousness in ways we never imagined. Sarah nodded, though her attention was focused on a more immediate concern. The integration of failed species hadn't been as smooth as their initial diplomatic success had suggested. Cultural differences that had led to trial failures were still causing friction in the collaborative environment. Commander Chun, we need your assistance. Captain Veltar approached, their plant-like features showing stress patterns Sarah had learned to recognize. The Hegemony Technological Consortium and the Zentari Mathematical Council have reached an impasse over the proposed new trial framework. What's the conflict? Fundamental philosophy. The Zentari insist that all problems can be reduced to mathematical certainties. The hegemony technologists argue that practical application must take precedence over theoretical purity. Neither side will compromise. Sarah sighed. This was the third major disagreement this week, and each one threatened to fracture the fragile cooperation they'd built. Where are they meeting? Conference Chamber 7. But, Commander, you should know that Captain Crix 9 has positioned Vaxi security forces nearby. He's concerned the argument might escalate to violence. The situation was deteriorating faster than Sarah had hoped. She made her way through corridors that hummed with energy, past workstations where representatives from dozens of species collaborated on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. But for every success story, there was another example of incompatible worldviews creating deadlock. Conference Chamber 7 buzzed with tension when she arrived. On one side of the room, the Zentari delegation had arranged themselves in perfect geometric formation, their crystalline forms pulsing with mathematical patterns that conveyed frustrated logic. Opposite them, the hegemony technologists had clustered around practical displays showing real-world applications, their biomechanical augmentations sparking with aggressive emphasis. The theoretical framework must be mathematically sound. Prime Calculator Zenth 47 was saying, his harmonic voice tight with controlled frustration. Any system built on approximations and practical compromises will inevitably fail when subjected to universal constants. Fleet Engineer Vorth 9 of the Hegemony Technological Consortium responded with equal intensity, her cybernetic implants glowing red with agitation. Universal constants are meaningless if the system can't function in actual implementation. Your species thinks mathematics is reality. We know reality is what happens when your equations meet the universe. Fascinating perspective from a species that failed the trial of wisdom. Zenth 47 replied coldly. The chamber erupted. Hegemony representatives surged forward while Zentari forms began pulsing with aggressive geometric patterns. Sarah could see Vaxi security forces tensing outside the transparent walls, ready to intervene if the argument turned physical. Stop! Sarah's voice cut through the chaos with command authority that surprised even her. The room fell silent, all attention focused on the human commander who had somehow become the unofficial mediator for impossible conflicts. Sit down, she continued more quietly. All of you, we're going to solve this the human way. Which is? Engineer Vorth 9 asked suspiciously. We're going to fight it out properly. The silence that followed suggested her solution was not what anyone had expected. Sarah activated the chamber's holographic systems, creating a three-dimensional workspace in the center of the room. Here's what we're going to do, she announced. You're both right, and you're both wrong, and we're going to prove it through practical demonstration. Engineer Vorth 9. Design a trial scenario that prioritizes practical application over theoretical purity. Prime Calculator Zenth 47. Design one that demands mathematical precision above all else. To what end? Zenth 47 asked. Then, we're going to run both scenarios and see what happens. If the practical approach works better, the Zentari admit that mathematics isn't everything. If the mathematical approach succeeds, the hegemony admits that theory matters. If they both fail, Sarah smiled grimly. Then, we design a third approach that combines the best of both. Dr. Webb, who had followed her to the conference room, chuckled softly. The human method, when faced with two incompatible truths, find a way to test them both. The next 6 hours passed in intense collaborative competition. The Zentari designed a scenario that required test subjects to solve a paradox about the nature of infinity while navigating a maze that rearranged itself according to mathematical principles. The hegemony created a practical challenge involving resource management in a hostile environment where theoretical solutions meant death and pragmatic improvisation meant survival. Both sides worked with the focused intensity of species, proving fundamental aspects of their worldview. Other representatives gathered to observe, turning the chamber into an impromptu amphitheater where galactic civilizations watch their philosophical differences play out in real time. Testing protocol established, announced Judge Axiom of Stars, appearing in the chamber with its characteristic shimmer of crystalline light. The ancient being had been observing the proceedings with obvious interest. Both scenarios will be evaluated using volunteer subjects from neutral species. The results were illuminating. The mathematical scenario produced elegant solutions that worked perfectly within the controlled environment, but collapsed when environmental variables were introduced. The practical scenario generated robust responses that solved immediate problems, but created larger systemic issues that weren't apparent until later analysis. Both approaches are fundamentally flawed, Sarah announced to the assembled representatives. The mathematical model assumes perfect information and controlled conditions that don't exist in reality. The practical model assumes that immediate solutions won't create long-term problems that require theoretical understanding to predict. So neither approach is superior? Engineer Vorth, 9 asked. Neither approach is complete, Sarah corrected. But combined, she activated the holographic workspace, showing how elements from both scenarios could be integrated. What if we design trials that require both mathematical understanding and practical implementation? What if success means proving you can think through theoretical implications while also adapting to unexpected real-world conditions? Prime Calculator Zenth 47 flickered through several configurations before stabilizing on what Sarah had learned to recognize as thoughtful consideration. A hybrid approach. Theoretical frameworks tested through practical application, with feedback loops that allow practical experience to modify theoretical understanding. Engineer Vorth, 9 added, her cybernetic implants shifting to contemplative blue. The integration process that followed became a model for resolving other conflicts throughout the Nexus. Species with incompatible philosophies learned to design collaborative tests that validated multiple approaches simultaneously. The warrior cultures found ways to channel their aggression into protective scenarios. The pacifist civilizations discovered how their conflict resolution skills could prevent problems that warriors would have to solve through force. Commander Chun, Judge Axiom of Stars, approached her as the chamber began to empty, successful collaboration having exhausted the participants. Your species continues to demonstrate unexpected solutions to apparently irreconcilable conflicts. We've had a lot of practice, Sarah replied. Humans have been dealing with incompatible worldviews for our entire history. We learned that usually both sides are partially right about different aspects of the same problem. And when both sides are completely wrong, Sarah grinned. Then we find a completely new way to be wrong together until we figure out how to be right. The ancient judge's form shifted through colors that might have been amusement. Your approach to wrongness as a collaborative learning process is novel. Over the following days, the hybrid model began producing results that exceeded everyone's expectations. Trial scenarios that combined theoretical rigor with practical flexibility created challenges that required cooperation between species with different strengths. A mathematical puzzle might require ethical considerations that the Corellians could provide. A tactical scenario might need artistic insights that only the aesthetic-focused veil dancers could supply. But the most significant breakthrough came when Engineer Vorth, 9, and Prime Calculator Zenth, 47 approached Sarah with a joint proposal. We want to design a new category of trial. Vorth, 9 explained, her cybernetic implants synchronized with Zenth 47's mathematical displays. Something that tests not individual species but collaborative groups. Multi-species trial scenarios, Zenth 47 added. Challenges that can only be solved through genuine cooperation between different types of consciousness. Sarah studied their preliminary designs with growing excitement. The proposed trials would require participants from at least 3 different species, each contributing their unique cognitive strengths to achieve solutions that none could reach alone. Mathematical precision, practical implementation, ethical consideration, artistic insight, and tactical analysis would all be necessary components of success. This changes everything, Dr. Webb observed, reviewing the technical specifications. You're not just redesigning the trials, you're redesigning what it means to be worthy of galactic civilization. That's exactly what we're doing, Sarah replied. Instead of testing WHE 6 months after the transformation began, Commander Sarachin stood in the newly constructed Observatory of Collaborative Achievement, watching as the first graduating class of multi-species trial teams prepared for their final evaluation. The nexus of trials had grown beyond recognition, its crystalline structure now incorporating architectural elements from every participating civilization. Nervous? Dr. Webb asked, joining her at the observation platform. Below them, 5 different species worked in perfect synchronization to solve a challenge that would have been impossible for any single civilization. Terrified, Sarah admitted. Today determines whether our entire approach actually works, or if we've just been fooling ourselves with good intentions. The trial scenario playing out below was deliberately brutal in its complexity. The test subjects faced a collapsing star system where multiple worlds needed evacuation, but the available rescue ships were insufficient and time was running out. Mathematical calculation was required to optimize evacuation routes. Ethical frameworks were needed to determine priority populations. Tactical planning was essential for coordinating the rescue fleet. Artistic insight was necessary to convince panicked populations to cooperate, and practical engineering skills were vital for keeping damaged ships operational. Team Alpha consisted of a Zentari mathematician, a Corellian ethicist, a Vaxi tactical coordinator, a human engineer, and a veiled dancer artistic communicator. 6 months ago, such a combination would have been not just unlikely, but impossible. The species had barely acknowledged each other's existence, let alone their potential value as partners. Navigation calculations complete. Announced Zenth 92, the Zentari representative. Optimal evacuation sequence requires prioritizing the third planet's equatorial settlements due to gravitational efficiency factors. Ethical analysis disagrees, responded Velmora, the Corellian team member. The third planet's polar settlements have higher concentrations of elderly and disabled individuals who cannot be evacuated during secondary operations. In the old trial system, this would have been an impossible choice: efficiency versus compassion, mathematical optimization versus ethical obligation. But Sarah watched with pride as the team seamlessly integrated both perspectives. Crix 14, can our tactical deployment handle split-route operations? Asked Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, the human representative. The Vaxi coordinator's scales shifted through rapid calculations. Affirmative. If we deploy escort fighters to protect the less efficient polar route, we can execute both operations simultaneously. I can convince the equatorial populations to assist with polar evacuation, added Yathala, the veil dancer. Their artistic traditions include themes of intergenerational responsibility. Proper presentation will make cooperation a matter of cultural pride rather than sacrifice. Engineering perspective, Martinez interjected. We'll need to modify 3 of the rescue ships for polar terrain operations. 30-minute retrofit window if we start now. What followed was a symphony of collaborative problem-solving that exceeded every projection. Each species contributed their strengths while compensating for others' limitations. The mathematical precision of the Zentari provided the framework. The ethical insights of the Corellians ensured no one was abandoned. The tactical expertise of the Vaxi coordinated complex operations. The human engineering adaptability solved unexpected technical problems. The veiled dancer communication skills maintained morale and cooperation among all participants. Simulation complete. Announced Judge Axiom of Stars, materializing beside Sarah and Webb. All population centers evacuated successfully. 0 casualties. Mission efficiency, 847% above single-species baseline calculations. Sarah let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. They actually did it. They exceeded it, the judge corrected. This level of collaborative problem-solving was not theoretically possible under previous paradigms. The whole has become significantly greater than the sum of its parts. Similar successes were being replicated throughout the Nexus. In Conference Chamber 12, former enemies were designing integrated defense strategies that protected peaceful species while channeling warrior culture's need for purpose. In Laboratory Section 5, scientific teams combining theoretical insights from multiple civilizations were making breakthrough discoveries that had eluded single-species research for millennia. But the most significant transformation was happening in the Galactic Communications Center, where representatives from over 100 species were establishing the framework for a new form of interstellar governance. Instead of a hierarchical system based on worthiness standards, they were creating a collaborative network where each species contributed their unique capabilities to shared challenges. Commander Chun, Fleet Admiral Gorth Prime approached, his massive frame somehow managing to move quietly through the crystalline corridors. The former hegemony leader had become one of the most effective advocates for the new system, his warrior culture's honor codes translating into fierce protection for collaborative principles. Admiral, how are the integration protocols working out? Beyond expectations. My tactical specialists have been paired with Corellian peacekeepers and human diplomats to create rapid response teams for interstellar conflicts. Yesterday, they resolved a border dispute that had been escalating toward war for 6 months. No shots fired, all parties satisfied with the outcome. Sarah smiled. The old system would have required one side to prove their worthiness by defeating the other. The new system proves worthiness by finding solutions where all sides benefit. Gorth Prime paused, his expression thoughtful. Commander, there's something else. The younger species, civilizations that haven't yet achieved interstellar travel. They're watching our transformation with great interest. Several have requested early integration into the collaborative framework. This was unprecedented. Under the old trial system, species had to achieve certain technological and social milestones before even being allowed to attempt the tests. The new model was attracting civilizations that weren't yet spacefaring, but recognized the value of collaborative development. What's the judge's position on early integration? See for yourself. Admiral Gorth Prime led her to the strategic planning chamber, where Judge Axiom of Stars was facilitating a discussion between mature civilizations and representatives from 3 pre-spaceflight species who had sent quantum communication signals requesting participation. The old paradigm required species to develop in isolation until they achieved arbitrary benchmarks, the judge was explaining. The new paradigm suggests that collaborative development might be more effective than solitary struggle. One of the pre-spaceflight representatives, a being that appeared to be made of living crystal like the eternal judges themselves, pulsed with eager energy. Our world faces environmental challenges that threaten our survival. Collaborative input from species that have solved similar problems could save millions of lives while teaching us to contribute to the galactic community. Sarah recognized the echo of humanity's situation, a species reaching for the stars while their world burned beneath them. The difference was that this civilization was asking for help instead of trying to solve everything alone. Motion to approve early integration protocols, announced Prime Calculator Zenth, 47, who had become one of the most vocal supporters of expanding the collaborative model. Mathematical analysis indicates that guided development produces superior outcomes compared to isolated advancement. Ethical analysis concurs, added Captain Veltar. Denying assistance to struggling species contradicts the compassionate principles we claim to represent. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, civilizations that hadn't yet achieved spaceflight would be integrated into the interstellar community as junior partners rather than excluded subjects waiting for their turn to prove worthiness. Later that day, Sarah stood alone in the memorial chamber, no longer a gallery of failures, but a celebration of the learning process that had led to transformation. The statues of weeping Corellians and broken Zentari mathematicians had been joined by new additions. Collaborative scenes showing multiple species working together on solutions that none could have achieved alone. Regrets? Dr. Webb asked, appearing beside her with his characteristic quiet presence. None, Sarah replied immediately. Well, one small regret. I wish we could tell the humans who came before us what we accomplished here. The explorers and diplomats and scientists who died believing their species wasn't worthy of the stars. They never got to see this. Webb nodded thoughtfully. Maybe they did see it, in a way. Every failure taught the galaxy something about consciousness and cooperation. Every rejection showed the eternal judges that their system was incomplete. Our predecessors didn't fail. They planted seeds that we finally figured out how to cultivate. Judge Axiom of Stars materialized beside them, its ancient presence somehow conveying satisfaction and anticipation in equal measure. Commander Chun, Dr. Webb, I wanted to inform you of a development you should find significant. What kind of development? We have received a communication from the Deep Archive, a repository of consciousness that has existed since before our own creation. They have been observing the transformation of the trial system with great interest. Sarah felt a chill of anticipation, and they wish to meet with the species responsible for catalyzing this change. It appears that what we have accomplished here represents the solution to challenges far greater than the integration of galactic civilizations. Meaning, Commander, that your species' approach to impossible problems may be exactly what the universe needs to face threats that even the eternal judges cannot comprehend alone. As if summoned by those words, the Nexus began to pulse with new energy patterns. In the depths of space around the artifact, sensors detected the approach of something vast and ancient, moving with the slow patience of cosmic forces that measure time in eons rather than moments. Sarah laughed, the same defiant sound that had broken the trial of courage and changed everything that followed. Because, of course, the universe would present them with new, impossible challenges just when they thought they'd figured out the old ones. Well, she said to Dr. Webb and Judge Axiom of Stars, I guess we're about to find out if our collaborative approach scales up to cosmic-level problems. Are you concerned? The judge asked. Sarah grinned, thinking about a species that had reached the stars while their planet burned, who had faced the death of hope itself, and responded with laughter, who had transformed failure into learning and competition into cooperation. Terrified, she admitted cheerfully. But that's never stopped us before. Around them, the Nexus continued to evolve, its ancient structures adapting to accommodate whatever new challenges were approaching. In its corridors, representatives from over 100 species prepared for problems they couldn't yet imagine, united by the revolutionary understanding that the best solutions came not from individual greatness, but from collaborative strength. The age of isolated trial by worthiness had ended. The age of collaborative growth had begun. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, ancient intelligences that had waited eons for the universe to learn the lessons of cooperation finally began to hope that the cosmos might be ready for what was coming. The Deathworlders had laughed at the impossible and made it possible. Now it was time to see what else they could accomplish when the impossible became cosmic in scale. The transformation was complete, but the journey was just beginning. Their individual species meet arbitrary standards. We're creating opportunities for different forms of consciousness to prove they can work together. The implications rippled through the galactic community with surprising speed. Species that had viewed each other as fundamentally incompatible began exploring collaborative possibilities. Former enemies discovered that their differences made them more effective partners than rivals with similar approaches. 3 days later, the first multi-species trial team prepared to face a challenge that no single civilization could solve alone. As Sarah watched representatives from 5 different species coordinate their approach to an impossible scenario, she realized that humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization might not be their unconventional problem-solving or their defiant optimism. It might be their stubborn refusal to accept that differences meant incompatibility. The trial began, and for the first time in galactic history, failure and success became collaborative efforts rather than individual achievements. The transformation was far from complete, but the foundation had been laid for something unprecedented, a galactic civilization built on the strength of diversity rather than the uniformity of worthiness standards. And in the depths of the ancient nexus, systems that had remained unchanged for 10 millennia continued to evolve, adapting to possibilities their creators had never imagined. "Judge," she said thoughtfully, "what do you think the galaxy will look like when we're done here?" "Unknown," Axiom of Stars replied, its ancient presence somehow conveying satisfaction. For the first time in 10,000 cycles, the future has become genuinely unpredictable. It is liberating. As if on cue, the Nexus pulsed with new energy patterns, its ancient structure continuing to evolve in response to the unprecedented gathering within its walls. Somewhere in its depths, former failures and supposed successes worked together to build something that transcended both categories. The transformation was far from complete, but Sarah could already see that the galaxy would never be the same. Remed artifact. Maybe that's the same thing. As the Persistence moved toward its assigned docking port, Chin couldn't help but think about the implications. Humanity had reached the stars carrying all their flaws and failures, their wars and prejudices and environmental disasters. They'd approached the trial not as perfect beings seeking validation, but as imperfect ones seeking growth. And somehow, that imperfection had been exactly what the cosmos needed. The docking clamps engaged with a gentle thrum that resonated through the ship's hull. Around them, 11 other vessels were going through the same process, their crews preparing for a second chance at something they'd thought lost forever. "All hands," Rodriguez announced over the intercom. "Prepare for extended operations aboard an alien artifact. And remember, we're not just representing humanity anymore. We're part of something bigger." Another long pause. The Galactic Communion must deliberate. "Return to your vessel. An answer will be provided within one stellar rotation." As they made their way back through the corridors of failed civilizations, Sarah couldn't help but notice that some of the monuments looked different now. The Corellian's statue no longer depicted weeping. Instead, they seemed thoughtful, as if reconsidering their approach. The Zentari's mathematician appeared to be laughing at some cosmic joke only he understood. "Judge Axiom of Stars," Sarah called out as they reached the airlock. "What happens to the species that fail?" "Really?" The crystalline being flickered through several forms before responding. "They're given the opportunity to try again and again until they learn to see beyond the boundaries of the possible. Your species has provided interesting new data for their consideration." The airlock sealed behind them, leaving the three humans alone with their thoughts and the growing certainty that they had fundamentally changed something ancient and immutable. Whether that change was for better or worse remained to be seen.